Most refrigerators don't die of old age, they die of neglect. Across Australia, households spend $800 to $1,200 replacing fridges that could be running like new for nothing, or pay technicians $300 for problems fixable in 30 minutes with a $10 brush kit. A dust-clogged condenser coil alone forces your compressor to work 30% harder, silently adding hundreds to your electricity bill each year. What engineers check first when a fridge underperforms is rarely what manufacturers want you to know. That's exactly where we start. Behind almost every struggling fridge sits a story of dust, heat, and wasted money. In Australian homes, the condenser coil is often the first casualty of neglect, a hidden tangle of metal at the back or underneath, quietly collecting lint, peat hair, and kitchen grime. When these coils clog, the compressor is forced to work up to 30% harder, burning through electricity and shortening its own lifespan. The numbers are stark. A dirty coil can drive your fridge's energy use up by 35%, adding an average of $111 to your annual power bill. Multiply that by 10 million fridges across the country, and the national cost of this invisible problem soars into the millions every year. Mike Reynolds, a senior technician with decades of experience, has seen it all. He has lost count of the service calls where a homeowner is ready to replace a dying fridge, only for him to find the real culprit, a mat of dust choking the coils. Mike's approach is simple. Unplug the fridge, grab a $10 brush, and run it along the coils until the metal shines. A vacuum cleaner finishes the job. In less than 20 minutes, the compressor's load drops, the fridge cools more efficiently, and the energy meter slows. The improvement is immediate, measurable, and, crucially, requires no special skills or expensive tools. Australian energy rating data backs up Mike's experience. Field studies show that after a single coil cleaning, kilowatt-hour consumption can drop by as much as 30%. Over a year, that is the difference between a fridge that quietly sips power and one that guzzles it, driving up household bills. The real scandal is how rarely this fix is mentioned by manufacturers or retailers. Instead, service calls and premature replacements continue, lining the pockets of repair businesses and appliance stores. For the price of a brush kit, less than a round of coffees, anyone can reclaim those lost dollars and restore their fridge to peak performance. It is the first tool in the maintenance kit and the quickest way to turn back the clock on a tired appliance. A refrigerator's ability to keep food cold depends on more than just the compressor and coils. The rubber door seal, the gasket, forms the frontline defense against warm air sneaking in. In too many Australian homes, that seal quietly fails, letting in a slow, invisible leak of heat that the fridge must fight day and night. It's a simple flaw, but the penalty is real. A worn or split gasket can drive up energy use by as much as 15% and is responsible for around 12% of all service calls, according to national repair data. Laura, a homeowner in Newcastle, demonstrates the quickest way to check for a faulty seal. She closes a sheet of paper in the fridge door and gives it a gentle tug. If the paper slides out easily, the seal isn't gripping tightly enough. This 5-second test catches 90% of problem gaskets, no tools required. For Laura, the result meant a trip to her local appliance parts shop. The replacement gasket cost her just under $40, well within the typical range of $25 to $60 for most Australian brands, including Fisher & Paykel, Westinghouse, Samsung, and LG. Swapping the old seal for the new one took less than half an hour, with no special skills or adhesives needed. The impact was immediate. Over the next quarter, Laura's electricity bill dropped by more than $10, matching the savings predicted by Australian energy rating studies. Across 1 million households, that adds up to millions in avoided costs and untold tons of wasted energy prevented. Yet most manufacturers and retailers rarely mention the humble gasket in their maintenance guides, and few service technicians offer seal checks unless prompted. The industry's silence is no accident. Every ignored seal means more service calls, more replacements, and more profit for those selling new appliances. For the price of a takeaway dinner, a fresh gasket can restore your fridge's cooling power and keep your money out of the retailer's till. It's the second essential item in the DIY toolkit, and a clear example of how overlooked knowledge can put real dollars back in the hands of Australian families. A single twist of a dial can cost the average Australian household up to $64 a year. That's the hidden price of running your fridge just a few degrees too warm or too cold. Jaspreet, a renter in Parramatta, learned this the hard way. She had always assumed her fridge was set correctly, but when milk started spoiling days before the use-by date, she checked the dial. The setting was at 6 degrees Celsius, not the recommended 3 degrees Celsius. According to CSIRO, every extra degree above 3 degrees Celsius can add up to 20% more energy use, and a fridge running at 5 degrees Celsius or higher risks food safety as well as higher bills. Resetting the dial is a 5-minute fix with no tools needed. Jaspreet used a simple fridge thermometer, available at most supermarkets for under $10, to check the true compartment temperature. She adjusted the dial down 1 notch, waited a few hours, and checked again. When the display settled at 3 degrees Celsius, she locked the setting in. For the freezer, she followed the manufacturer's guidance and set it to minus 18 degrees Celsius. Keeping the freezer at this temperature and the fridge at 3 degrees Celsius matches the CSIRO's optimal range. Overfilling or underfilling can affect performance too, so Jaspreet kept her fridge about 3/4 full, which helps maintain stable temperatures without overworking the compressor. The difference showed up in her next quarterly bill. By correcting the temperature, she avoided the 20% penalty that would have added more than $60 a year to her electricity costs. Multiply this across 10 million Australian fridges, and the national waste from misset dials is staggering. Yet most instruction manuals bury this advice deep in the fine print, and retailers rarely mention it at the point of sale. The fix is free, requires no parts, and restores performance instantly. A clear win for any household willing to check the dial. Jaspreet's experience shows that overlooked settings can quietly drain both energy and money, but a moment's attention can return a fridge to its best. Jaspreet's fridge sits snugly inside a kitchen alcove, boxed in by cabinetry on both sides. Mike Reynolds arrives with a tape measure and a checklist, ready to solve the next puzzle. He starts by measuring the gap behind the fridge, just 2 centimeters, well short of the Australian standard AS 3780, which calls for at least 10 centimeters at the rear and 5 centimeters on each side. This missing space isn't just a technicality, it's the difference between a compression that cruises and one that's forced into overdrive. Blocked airflow around a refrigerator traps heat, making the compressor run longer and harder. The effect is immediate: a 6-degree rise in compartment temperature, a 40% surge in electricity use, and food that spoils faster. According to Australian energy rating data, nearly 1 in 10 repair callouts are traced back to poor ventilation, not broken parts. In Jaspreet's case, her built-in fridge was installed flush against the wall with no way for hot air to escape. The result? A fridge that never quite cools down, a compressor that never gets to rest, and a power bill that climbs higher every quarter. Mike pulls the fridge out, creating a 10-centimeter gap at the rear and 5 centimeters on each side. He checks the top, 15 centimeters of breathing room, as recommended. Within hours, the internal temperature drops by 6 degrees, and the compressor cycles off for the first time in weeks. Over a year, this small adjustment can save between $14 and $28 on electricity and add 5 to 8 years to the appliance's life. Multiply that by millions of Australian households, and the savings are staggering. Manufacturers and retailers rarely mention these clearance rules in their sales pitches or installation guides. But the evidence is clear. A tape measure and a few minutes of rearranging can restore a fridge's performance, cut household energy use, and keep more money in the family budget. For renters and owners alike, respecting those hidden clearances is the simplest, most overlooked fix in the book. Inside the fridge, another problem quietly builds up, one that's easy to miss until the ice maker sputters or the water dispenser slows to a trickle. Most Australian fridges with built-in water and ice systems rely on a filter cartridge that sits out of sight, quietly collecting minerals and sediment from the tap. Over time, these blockages force the water valve to work harder, slow the ice cycle, and can even trigger the heater element in the ice maker to run longer than needed. The result? Higher energy use, more wear on internal parts, and water that tastes stale or metallic. Laura, still in her Newcastle kitchen, demonstrates how simple this fix can be. She checks the date on her filter, 6 months since the last change, right on the manufacturer's schedule. A replacement cartridge for her Westinghouse model costs her $45 at the local hardware store, a standard price across most Australian brands. No technician needed. She twists out the old filter, flushes the new one with a jug of water, and clicks it into place. For stubborn mineral buildup, she runs a cup of white vinegar through the line, then follows with 2 liters of fresh water to clear out any residue. The whole job takes less than 15 minutes. Australian Energy Rating data estimates that a clogged filter or mineral-choked line can add up to 5% to a fridge's total energy load, roughly 8 kilowatt-hours a year for a typical unit. That's a modest saving, but over the life of the appliance, it adds up. More importantly, regular filter changes and a simple vinegar flush can prevent breakdowns that lead to costly service calls or early replacement. Yet, manufacturers and retailers rarely mention this low-cost routine, focusing instead on expensive service plans or bundled filter subscriptions. For the price of a cartridge and a bottle of vinegar, any household can restore water flow, improve ice quality, and keep their fridge running like new. Laura's Quick Swap is a reminder that some of the most effective fixes are hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be claimed by those who know where to look. Ice creeping across the back wall of a fridge is more than a nuisance. It's a warning sign that cold air circulation is choking off inside the appliance. Mike Reynolds, running a service call in Wollongong, finds a familiar scene. A thick frost blanket wrapped around the evaporator cover, muffling the hum of the fan. The blades, meant to push cold air through every shelf, are jammed with ice. As the frost builds, the fan draws up to 10% more current, working harder but moving less air. The result: uneven cooling, spoiled food, and a compressor that never gets a break. The fix is simple but rarely mentioned in owners' manuals. Mike switches off the fridge at the wall and props the door open. He lays towels to catch meltwater, then waits a full 24 hours, enough time for every last sheet of ice to release its grip on the coils and fan. For Australian homes, a 6-monthly inspection is the gold standard. Open the freezer compartment, check for frost thicker than 5 millimeters, and listen for a straining fan. If you hear a whine or notice airflow dropping, it's time for a manual defrost. After the ice melts, Mike wipes away residue and spins the fan by hand. No resistance, no squeal. He plugs the fridge back in and watches as the fan draws its normal current, evidence that the system is breathing freely again. Across technician logs, more than 60% of fridges with airflow complaints are revived by this routine alone. The cost? A few towels and a day of patience. Manufacturers and service companies rarely highlight this, but for the average Australian household, a regular defrost can restore performance, cut power bills, and add years to an appliance's life. It's the kind of overlooked knowledge that keeps money in your pocket and your fridge running like new. Jaspreet slides a spirit level across the top of her fridge, checking for the telltale bubble. Even a small tilt, just 3 degrees off, can set up a chain reaction inside the machine. Compressors in Australian fridges are designed to circulate oil and refrigerant smoothly, but when the cabinet leans, oil pools away from bearings, and vibration grows louder with every cycle. The effect is more than just noise. A fridge running out of level can lose up to 5 years of its expected lifespan, as bearings grind and seals wear unevenly. Anti-vibration pads, sold for as little as $15 at Bunnings or online, offer a quick fix. Jaspreet places a set under each corner, adjusting the feet until the bubble sits dead center. The result is immediate, a drop in hum by nearly 70%, verified in technician reports across Sydney and Melbourne. For most households, this simple step silences rattles, protects the compressor, and delivers a smoother, longer-running appliance. The pads themselves last years, and installation takes less than 5 minutes with no tools required. While manufacturers rarely mention this in their guides, the evidence is clear. Proper leveling and vibration control are the last line of defense before bigger, costlier problems strike. For under $40, any Australian household can buy years of extra life for their fridge and keep it running quietly, often as good as new. A fridge that never quite cools, runs constantly, or hums with a faint hiss is rarely just dirty or out of balance. For Mike Reynolds, spotting oil stains near the compressor is the final warning. These are the unmistakable signs of a refrigerant leak. No amount of cleaning or DIY repair can fix this. In Australia, only licensed technicians can legally handle refrigerants, and for good reason. Leaks not only sap cooling power, but can push energy use up by 15% or more, leaving the compressor running non-stop and driving up electricity bills. Repairing a leak typically costs between $200 and $500, but the law offers protection. Under the Australian consumer law, major retailers, including Harvey Norman, The Good Guys, and appliances online, must repair or replace any fridge with a sealed system fault within 5 years, regardless of the manufacturer's warranty. Rob Miller, consumer law advisor, recommends always getting a written diagnosis from the technician. With that report, retailers are legally required to cover the cost or provide a replacement. Ignoring these rights can leave families paying hundreds for repairs that should be free. Hissing, oil stains, a compressor that won't stop, these are the signals to act. 8 steps, 1 checklist. This is the full restoration sequence that brings a tired fridge back to life in the average Australian home. Start with the coils, the gasket, the temperature settings, and ventilation. Add water filter swaps, ice maker flushes, periodic defrosts, and a spirit level for the feet. The total outlay? Less than $50 in basic tools and parts. The result? For most households, a cut in fridge energy use of 22 to 35%, confirmed by before and after readings on the same energy meter, quarter after quarter. But the impact goes beyond the power bill. Industry data shows that 28% of all fridge service calls are for issues fixed by these checklist steps, no technician required. Yet if you walk into a retailer, you'll find replacement parts marked up 300 to 500% over wholesale, and a new fridge sale can net the store a margin of $1,000 or more. Rob Miller, consumer law advisor, spells out the legal leverage. Under Australian consumer law, you have the right to a free repair or replacement for sealed system faults within 5 years, regardless of the warranty card. Mike Reynolds, the technician, confirms the technical payoff. 9 out of 10 fridges written off as dying are revived by these 8 steps. The evidence is clear, simple, low-cost maintenance keeps your fridge running like new, saves real money, and puts the power back in your hands, not the retailer's. The only thing standing in the way is knowledge, now in the hands of every Australian household. Across Australia, more than 10 million fridges quietly drain power and wallets, often for want of 5 minutes maintenance. Every overlooked coil, blocked vent, or cracked seal means higher bills and shorter appliance life. The real cost isn't just wasted energy or money, it's the knowledge kept from everyday households. In a market built on replacement, informed Australians hold the real power. What will you do with it? Let me know in the comments.